Hi guys! So today we are doing Cricut project. It's actually a gloomy day outside today, and that doesn't make me sad at all. I'm actually excited because I love crafting while it's raining or on gray days. I don't know, it just makes me happy. Rocking the chipmunk look. I got my wisdom teeth pulled, my face is still kind of swollen. I got a big bruise right here, but it's going down. It's going down. If you are new to my channel, my name is Lily from lilyarter.com. Today I'm going to be sharing 3 fall Cricut projects. So I actually partnered up with Cricut for this video, and we're hoping to show you guys how easy it is to customize and decorate using your Cricut machine. The first project I want to share with you today is this DIY wreath I made using my Cricut machine. Here's all the supplies I used to make it. This wreath cost me around $30 to make, and it was actually a gift for a very close friend of mine. She needed a wreath for her front door, and I wanted to make something simple and timeless for her. I got this wire wreath base from the dollar store, and surprisingly, it was actually a decent size. It was 14 inches in diameter. I usually don't find anything that big at my local dollar store. I grabbed 2 rolls of this burlap ribbon as well, and I started by removing the lace detailing on it. And I was thinking to give the base something more solid, I wrapped this burlap ribbon around the wire wreath and secured it at the end with some hot glue, just so it looks more solid. Okay, for the greenery, oh my goodness, I was going back and forth on this and I couldn't decide on what greenery I wanted, but I got 2 of these eucalyptus garlands from Hobby Lobby. They're actually kind of pricey, but they were on sale, so I only ended up paying $20 for both of them, so I figured that's not too bad. To attach them to the wreath, I cut small pieces of floral wire and started by attaching the garland on the outer edges of the wreath with the floral wire to start off with. To attach the garland, I fed my floral wire through the burlap and wrapped it around the garland to secure it, working my way around the wreath like every 3 inches or so. Then I added the second garland onto the inner edges of the wreath. I trimmed and hot glued additional leaves where there were bald spots, making sure that the wreath base wasn't visible. Okay, let's make the gather sign. This was a bit of a learning curve for me, guys. I learned so much about cutting thicker materials with my Explore Air. So I have a little secret to share with you guys. Every time I do any kind of Cricut project, I'm just tempted to test its limits. I'm tempted to see what else could it cut that I don't know about. So this time I tried to cut cardboard with my Explore Air 2 machine. I know that this machine isn't made to cut super thick things, but it does. There's a certain type of cardboard that Cricut sells which you can cut with it, and it works, you guys. I stumbled on this corrugated cardboard on Cricut.com and I couldn't help but try it. The texture caught my eye and I had this idea in my head. I was thinking if I painted it the right way, I might be able to get it to look like galvanized metal, which is the exact look I wanted. When I started working with this cardboard, I realized it wasn't super thick and it actually bent super easy at a certain angle, so I decided to try and use chipboard for the backing. If you're not familiar with chipboard, it's like a stiff condensed cardboard material perfect for craft projects. Your Explore Air 2 machine actually has an option to cut light chipboard. I'm pretty sure that the Cricut Maker could cut thicker chipboard. The question was, how thick could I go with my Explore Air 2 machine? After a little bit of research, here's what I found on Cricut.com. Cricut states to make sure that the material you use for your Explore Air 2 machine is 2.0 millimeters or thinner. Okay, let's talk about graphics for this project. There's so many fonts to pick from on Cricut Design Space, and I sat there and looked through all of them, and none of the cursive fonts were thick enough. Corrugated cardboard is pretty picky when it comes to getting precise cuts. The thicker the font on your design, or the more basic the design is, the better it is and the cleaner cuts that you'll get. I reached out to Jessie from Wild Sparrow Design Print Shop on Etsy and asked her to do a custom graphic for me that had a thicker font, so I would be able to cut the cardboard with it. If you guys want the same design, I'll add a link in the description for you guys. Okay, so because I wanted my wording to be about 14 inches in length, I used a 12 by 24 mat for this. I started by cutting my chipboard in half and placing it onto the strong grit mat. I also added tape to the sides just in case. Next, I uploaded the graphic design in JPEG form onto Design Space and chose the option Simple and Continue. I then zoomed out and used the Select and Erase tool to remove any areas I didn't want cut. In my case, all the white areas. The blue square grid means that it's actually a transparent background. I clicked Continue and chose Save as Cut on the right before saving it. Okay, that's it. Now my design was ready to cut. I inserted the graphic into Design Space and resized it to about 14 inches in length. To set my material base, I made sure my dial on the machine was set on custom and clicked browse. I clicked material settings and found light chipboard in the options. This is where you can customize your cut settings. I test tried this a few different times, and for my chipboard found these settings worked best. I closed this window and clicked browse materials again, this time choosing the light chipboard option, and that's it. I followed the instructions prompted by Cricut, and Cricut does the rest. I should mention, even though the blade mentioned to use for this says it should be a fine point, I ended up using the deep point blade after doing some test runs. And here's how it looks once cut. The backside needed a little bit of help in some areas. I've noticed this happens with thicker materials. I decided to do 2 layers of chipboard for the backing. Now I was ready to cut my corrugated cardboard. Because these only come in 12 by 12 sheets, I decided to simply lay them out next to each other, carefully aligning the seams in the middle. To cut the cardboard, I also customized the settings under corrugated cardboard. I did a quick test run before cutting out the full project. Cricut recommends to use basic cuts when working with corrugated cardboard. This gather sign is by no means basic, and this did have me a little worried. When I was cutting it out, I was worried it wouldn't get the finer details, and it did start looking a little bit messy while cutting especially. But once I pulled it out and cleaned up all the edges, it wasn't bad at all. I actually tried this a few separate times and found it does a pretty consistent job with a tiny bit of fraying on the edges that I didn't mind at all. Some areas popped right off and got a clean cut, and other areas needed a little bit of help. So I do want to mention this because it did happen to me on one of my test runs while working with corrugated cardboard. The blade does sometimes tend to get stuck, and this is just like a printer getting jammed. All you need to do is push pause on your project, remove the blade, clean off the tiny bit of cardboard that is stuck on your blade, stick the blade back in, lock it in, and continue with your project. This did not ruin my project in any way. It continued it normally. Next, I used some simple Mod Podge to glue the 2 layers of chipboard together, and I applied more Mod Podge to secure the cardboard on top. I had a few silver paints to pick from, and I actually ended up going with this Testors enamel paint. It seemed to give the prettiest silver color. I ended up giving it a coat of this paint, and to add a galvanized metal effect, I dabbed a tiny bit of this charcoal metallic acrylic paint with a sponge, and then I would dab it on to the silver. A little goes a long way. I just kept dipping and dabbing until it started looking like rustic metal. To attach my sign to the wreath, I cut 2 small strips of ribbon and hot glued them to the backside. Then I fed floral wire through them and made sure where I was attaching the words, the leaves on the wreath had like flatter areas. This helped attach the words a lot easier. Then I simply secured the sign to the wreath with the wire, and that's it. Unfortunately, my friend was a bit camera shy, so I couldn't catch her reaction on camera, but she loved how the wreath turned out. The way the colors come together is definitely my favorite part. If I didn't make this wreath, I would never be able to tell that this sign is made from cardboard. The only thing I would do different to this DIY is maybe add some sealant or clear finish to the cardboard, just in case it rains or something. Okay, next I want to show you how I made these cute little pumpkin votives. Here's the supplies I used to make them. These pumpkins only cost me under $15 to make, and they could be displayed with or without flameless candles. I used some regular cardstock paper and vellum for this. This is my first time actually using vellum. If you're not familiar with it, it's like a paper, but it's kind of see-through, almost like frosted paper. I actually designed these pumpkin lanterns myself using Design Space simply by searching basic shapes under images and using their basic shapes and just kind of arranging them together. I'm not gonna lie, this took me forever to piece together, but it was kind of fun and therapeutic. You can use this same method to design your own custom patterns. I'll also go ahead and share the project link in the description if you want to make these exact pumpkins. Okay, so here's what the whole design looked like once it was cut out. Each cardstock pumpkin panel had a vellum panel that needed to be attached to it. I actually ended up designing 2 styles of panels, one that had no lacing but more intricate detailing, and the other that had lacing and had holes in the vellum that needed to be lined up with the cardstock panel. So to secure the vellum to the cardstock, I applied an even coat of Mod Podge with a sponge and secured the vellum onto it. I found that this worked best if you apply the Mod Podge with a bigger sponge because Mod Podge tends to dry super fast, like I'm talking seconds. As soon as I would attach the vellum to the cardstock with the glue, I added a tiny bit of tape on both ends and attached these panels to something round, allowing them to set for about 20 minutes. I did this to help the panels dry rounded, which eventually helps shape out the pumpkin. Once the panels were dry, I removed them and laced up the ones that needed lacing up with a very fine embroidery yarn. I secured the yarn on both ends on the inside of the panels with some hot glue. To make my pumpkin lid, I grabbed this long paper strip with slits from my design and I folded these slits up. Then I hot glued these folded slits onto my round piece of paper, creating a lip for my lid. And this should fit perfectly into your votive. I had some scrap leather lying around that I used to cut out some leaf shapes, and I stained this leather a bit darker with some diluted acrylic paint. Once it was dry, I hot glued the slits on the leaves and attached these leaves to the lid with some hot glue. I also cut a stick from a branch that I used as the pumpkin stem. Okay, now I used hot glue to attach my pumpkin panels onto my glass votive, working my way all the way around the glass votive until the whole pumpkin was complete. So in order to get your pumpkin even, it's important to glue the first panel straight and keep the other panels symmetrical to the first one. I was trying to figure out how to pick the pumpkin up without having to bend it too much. So I ended up gluing a piece of ribbon on the inside of my glass. This way I could move around by using the ribbon. Okay, so I tested a few different ways to light these. I actually got this candle at the dollar store and this one from the craft store. They both seem pretty dim. I'm gonna go ahead and turn off the lights, and they actually don't light up the pumpkin at all. I also had some of these fairy lights lying around, and these guys really lit up these pumpkins. I actually only ended up using one set of fairy lights that I separated into two parts between the pumpkins, and they made the pumpkins glow so pretty. I love leaving these on at night. The vellum paper worked perfect for these votives. I love how the lacing pops through the vellum as well. Here's how they look like in the daytime with lights. They are still super pretty and they glow even in the daytime. And here's how they look without lights. Honestly, I'm not a huge fan. I love them way more with lights in them. I just feel like the vellum doesn't get much justice at all without the lights in there. And for the last project, I want to share with you this super easy DIY thankful throw pillow that I made with frayed edges. This throw pillow cost me around $20 to make, and here's the supplies I used to make it. I also want to share a quick zipper installation hack that I picked up over the years. I started by measuring and marking how big I wanted my pillow cover to be. Then to install the zipper, I folded in about ½ an inch on the edges and ironed it down on both pieces of the fabric. I laid both pieces of the fabric next to each other, leaving no gap in the middle. Then I took my zipper and slipped it under and pinned the folded fabric to one side of the zipper first, then to the other side of the zipper. Now just unzip and sew the zipper on where you pinned it. You can remove the pins as you sew. And that's it. I love installing my pillow zippers this way. It is so easy. I moved on to the other end of the pillow and gave it a straight stitch as well. To limit the amount of fraying, I love using my pinking shears and going over the edges with them. Then I turned my pillow cover right side out and added 2 straight stitches on both sides of the pillow, giving it about a 1-inch seam allowance. In other words, I literally left 1 inch of raw edges on the outside of my pillow cover on both sides. I know this sounds confusing, but it actually should make sense once you see the frayed edges on the pillow. Next, I took a pin and used it to help me fray the edges on both sides of the pillowcase. This is where that 1-inch seam allowance comes in handy. Your fabric should stop fraying once you get to that seam. Here's how the pillow cover looked with the frayed edges on both sides. I hope it all makes sense now. For my choice of vinyl, I went with Everyday Iron-On Vinyl. And for my design, I searched the Cricut Design Space project library and I came across this Thankful t-shirt project. I thought the font was perfect on the word thankful. However, I didn't want to use the words for pie on my pillow. I ended up using the design as is. I just sized it to fit my vinyl and I let it cut everything out. Once I was ready to weed, this is when I ended up pulling off the rest of the words that I didn't want on my design. I placed my heat mat under the pillow cover and preheat my fabric for 5 seconds. I then placed my vinyl over the pillow and heat set it for 15 seconds. Since my vinyl was a bit too big for my heat press, I had to do this in 2 sections. I let it cool off a bit and remove my player plastic, and that's it. I love how easy this is to make. The font is so cute and elegant. I don't know why, but this font to me looks like it's been embroidered on. And these frayed edges are something I'll be doing more of for sure. Christmas is gonna be here soon. It's just to give you guys ideas. You could easily switch out the wording and styling on these projects and make a super cute Christmas wreath that says Merry Christmas or Noel or something. If you guys like this video, don't forget to give me a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe for more videos. If you're looking for more Cricut project ideas, I actually did a video recently where I shared 5 Cricut projects in one video. I'll go ahead and add that video for you guys right here, right now for you to check out. I'll see you guys all next time. Bye.